The distant howl of wind tore through the valley as Olivia Jameson watched the approaching dust cloud, her fingers tracing the brim of her late husband's worn Stetson. Spokane, Washington Territory, 1876, a place that once felt like home now seemed as barren as her heart. 3 months since the ambush that took Isaiah from her, yet the pain remained fresh as an open wound. The stagecoach robbery had left her a widow at 23, alone to manage their struggling homestead on the outskirts of town. "Madam," riders approaching. Young Billy Thornton, barely 14, hovered nervously by the porch steps. He'd been helping with chores since Isaiah's passing, but he was still just a boy. Olivia nodded, squinting against the afternoon sun. "I see them, Billy. Best fetch my rifle." The boy scurried inside as Olivia stood tall, her husband's hat clutched tightly against her chest like a shield. The 3 riders materialized from the dust, and she recognized the center figure, immediately Ian Northcott, the newly appointed deputy marshal who'd arrived in Spokane 2 months prior. His reputation had preceded him, former Texas Ranger, deadly with a pistol and, according to town gossip, haunted by something in his past. "Mrs. Jameson," he called, reining his chestnut mare to a halt. "Hope we're not intruding." The wind caught his words, carrying them across the yard like whispers. Ian Northcott was not what most would expect of a lawman. Tall and lean rather than imposing, with eyes the color of a stormy sky and a face weathered by sun and hardship. Yet there was something in his quiet demeanor that commanded respect. "Deputy Northcott," she acknowledged, chin raised slightly. "What brings you out this way?" He dismounted with fluid grace, removing his hat as a sign of respect. The 2 men behind him, one she recognized as Sheriff Donovan's deputy and the other a stranger, remained mounted. "There's been trouble, madam. Another stagecoach hit near Rattlesnake Canyon. Same gang that." He paused, eyes falling to the hat she clutched. "Same gang we believe responsible for the attack on your husband." The air between them seemed to thicken. Olivia's fingers tightened around Isaiah's hat. "We've tracked them to the foothills," Ian continued, "but I need to ask you something about that day. Something that might help us bring them to justice." Billy returned with the rifle, hovering protectively near Olivia. She nodded at him reassuringly before returning her attention to the deputy. "Come inside, deputy. The day grows cold." The interior of the cabin was modest but meticulously kept. Olivia had built this home with Isaiah, log by log, dream by dream. Now she maintained it with fierce determination, refusing to surrender to grief or hardship. "Coffee," she offered, placing Isaiah's hat carefully on the table. "Much obliged." Ian removed his leather gloves, revealing hands that were strong yet unexpectedly graceful. A thin scar ran across his right knuckles, the mark of a man familiar with violence. "What do you need to know?" Olivia asked directly, her back straight as she stoked the fire. Ian studied her for a moment. "The day your husband was killed, was there anything unusual? Something he mentioned, perhaps, or something you noticed about the men who attacked the coach?" Olivia poured the steaming coffee, her movements deliberate. "Isaiah was carrying a package, something for Judge Hollister in Spokane." Her voice remained steady despite the painful memories. "He never said what it contained, but the night before he left, a man came to our door. They spoke privately." Ian leaned forward. "Did you recognize this man?" "No, well-dressed though, not from these parts." She paused, remembering. "Isaiah was troubled afterward, said if anything happened to him I should look beneath the floorboards in our bedroom." Ian's eyes sharpened. "And did you?" "There was nothing there." Olivia met his gaze unflinchingly. "Whatever Isaiah hid, someone found it first." 2 weeks after the funeral, I returned from town to find the house ransacked." A muscle tightened in Ian's jaw. "You never reported a break-in. What would be the point?" Sheriff Donovan made it clear the case was closed, just another stagecoach robbery gone wrong. Bitterness edged her voice. "But it wasn't random, was it, Deputy?" Ian set down his cup. "No, madam, I don't believe it was." Their eyes locked, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "They'll come back," she said softly. "Whatever they're looking for, they believe it's still here." Ian nodded slowly. That's what I'm afraid of. He stood, his tall frame casting long shadows in the cabin. Mrs. Jameson, I can't in good conscience leave you here alone. Olivia's spine stiffened. I'm not leaving my home. I'm not suggesting you should. Ian hesitated, choosing his words carefully. But I'd like to post a guard, for your protection. You mean yourself, Olivia observed shrewdly. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm the best tracker in the territory. If they return, I'll know. Olivia studied him, weighing her limited options. My reputation will remain intact, Ian assured her. I'll sleep in the barn. No one need know I'm here except Billy, who I trust can be discreet. The young boy, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, nodded solemnly. Very well, Olivia finally agreed. But understand this, Deputy, this is my home, and I'll defend it with or without your help. Ian nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. I don't doubt that for a moment, Mrs. Jameson. As dusk fell, Ian sent his companions back to town with instructions to maintain the appearance that he was tracking the gang northward. Olivia watched from the porch as he unsaddled his horse and prepared a simple bed in the hayloft. Later, as she prepared a modest supper, she found herself wondering about the enigmatic deputy. Rumors in town painted him as a man with a past. Some said he'd lost a wife and child to Comanche raiders. Others claimed he'd been a gunslinger before taking up a badge. Whatever the truth, there was an unmistakable sadness behind his eyes that resonated with her own grief. The meal was simple rabbit stew and cornbread, but Ian ate with genuine appreciation. Been a while since I've had home cooking, he admitted, accepting a second serving. Your wife never taught you? Olivia asked, immediately regretting the personal question. A shadow passed over Ian's features. Never had one, came close once. Olivia didn't press further. They ate in companionable silence until a noise outside drew their attention. Ian was on his feet instantly, hand on his revolver. Stay here, he ordered quietly. Olivia ignored him, grabbing her rifle. My home, Deputy, my rules. They moved to the window together, peering into the gathering darkness. A lone figure approached on horseback. It's just Amos, Olivia said with relief, recognizing the elderly ranch hand who worked at the neighboring property. He checks on me sometimes. Ian remained tense until the old man had delivered his message, a warning about wolves spotted in the area, and departed. You have good neighbors, Ian observed, returning to his cooling meal. Some, Olivia agreed. Others began treating me differently after Isaiah died. A widow is an inconvenience, either an object of pity or a potential threat to marriages. Ian studied her across the table. You don't strike me as a woman who tolerates being pitied. No more than you strike me as a man who shares his burdens easily, she countered. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. Touché, Mrs. Jameson. Olivia, she corrected, surprising herself with the invitation to familiarity. Olivia, he repeated softly, and something in his voice made her look away. That night, Olivia lay awake, listening to the wind rattling the shutters. The presence of Ian Northcott in her barn was both reassuring and unsettling. It had been months since she'd felt truly safe, yet his presence reminded her of how vulnerable she truly was. Morning arrived with a blanket of fresh snow, unusual for early October. Olivia rose before dawn, her breath visible in the cold cabin as she rekindled the fire. She was kneading dough for biscuits when a knock at the door announced Ian's arrival. Tracks, he said without preamble, stomping snow from his boots. 3 men circled the property during the night. They didn't approach the house. Alarm tightened Olivia's chest. Scouting, Ian nodded grimly. Likely they'll be back tonight. He rubbed his stubbled jaw. We need to decide how to handle this. We fight, Olivia said simply, against what could be a gang of 6 or more. Ian shook his head. Too risky. I won't run, she insisted. Ian paced the small kitchen. What if we set a trap instead? Make them think you've left, lure them in. Olivia considered this. They'd need to see me leaving. With valuables, Ian added. Make it look convincing. The plan took shape over breakfast. Olivia would ostensibly leave for Spokane with Billy, making a show of loading her wagon with trunks and family heirlooms. In reality, she would circle back on horseback while Billy continued to town to alert the sheriff. Ian would remain hidden in the house, waiting for the gang to make their move. "It could work," Olivia admitted reluctantly, "but I won't be relegated to the sidelines. This is my fight too." Ian studied her, clearly weighing his next words. "Your husband was carrying something valuable, Olivia, something people are willing to kill for." "What was it?" "Evidence," Ian replied. "Against Judge Hollister and several prominent businessmen in Spokane. They've been selling weapons to hostile tribes in exchange for territory rights." Olivia sat back, stunned. Isaiah was helping build a case against them. Ian nodded. "He was working with federal marshals. The package contained documents, witness testimonies." "And now they think I have it," Olivia realized. "But I told you, what if he hid it somewhere you wouldn't think to look?" Ian suggested gently. "Somewhere only he would know about." The realization struck her suddenly. The well. At Ian's questioning look, she explained, "Isaiah dug our well himself, was peculiar about it, wouldn't let anyone else near it during the digging, said he wanted it done right." Ian's expression sharpened. "We need to check it before they return." The well stood 50 yards from the house, a simple stone structure with a wooden cover. Ian worked methodically, lowering himself down with a rope while Olivia kept watch. 20 minutes later he emerged, his clothes damp but his expression triumphant. In his hand was an oilskin package, sealed against the water. "This is it," he confirmed, carefully unwrapping the outer layer to reveal papers and what appeared to be a ledger. Names, dates, transactions, enough to hang Judge Hollister and his associates. Olivia felt a complex surge of emotions: pride in Isaiah's courage, grief at the danger it had placed him in, anger at the secrets he'd kept. "He never told me," she whispered. "Why wouldn't he trust me with this?" Ian's expression softened. "He was protecting you, Olivia. The less you knew, the safer you'd be if something happened to him." She blinked back tears. "And now we use this to bring them to justice," Ian said firmly. "But first we deal with their hired guns." The day passed in tense preparation. They fortified the house as best they could, creating firing positions and planning their strategy. Billy departed with the wagon as planned, making a conspicuous show of Olivia accompanying him. She doubled back through the woods an hour later, leading her horse quietly to avoid detection. Dusk brought an unnatural silence. Ian and Olivia waited inside the darkened house, weapons ready. The evidence was secured in Ian's saddlebags, ready to be taken to the federal marshal in Spokane if things went wrong. "Why did you become a lawman?" Olivia asked quietly, breaking the tense silence. Ian remained focused on the window. "Lost someone, to men who thought themselves above the law. Family," he hesitated. "Fiancé, back in Texas. Gang led by a man named Hollister took her when I was out on patrol." Olivia's breath caught. "Judge Hollister, his brother," Ian clarified. "Managed to escape justice in Texas. Followed his trail north years later, discovered his connection to the judge." His voice hardened. "Your husband was helping me build a case against both of them. The pieces fell into place. That's why you came to Spokane." Ian nodded once. "Isaiah was a good man, brave when I heard about the ambush. He trailed off. You blame yourself," Olivia realized. Before he could respond, a horse nickered softly outside. Ian motioned for silence, moving to a different window. Olivia took position at another, rifle ready. The attack came swiftly, 5 men approaching from different directions. The first shots shattered the front windows, sending glass flying. Ian returned fire methodically, dropping one attacker immediately. Olivia held her position, waiting until a shadow moved across the side of the house before firing. Her shot found its mark, eliciting a cry of pain. 3 left, Ian called, reloading. "They'll try to flush us out." As if confirming his prediction, a flaming torch arced through the broken window, landing on the wooden floor. Olivia rushed to stamp it out as Ian provided covering fire. The firefight intensified, bullets splintering wood around them. A sharp cry told Olivia that Ian had hit another target. 2, he updated. A crash from the back door signaled that someone had broken through. Olivia spun, firing instinctively as a large man charged into the kitchen. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, but he kept coming, knocking the rifle from her hands. They struggled briefly before Ian appeared, bringing the butt of his revolver down hard on the attacker's head. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, checking her quickly. "No," she gasped. But the last one, the answer came in the form of a shotgun blast that tore through the wall beside them. Ian pushed Olivia down, returning fire through the new opening. Silence followed, broken only by their heavy breathing and the distant sound of a horse galloping away. "He's running," Ian said grimly. "Probably back to Hollister." They secured the 3 wounded attackers, none of whom appeared to be the leader of the gang. By dawn, Sheriff Donovan and his deputies had arrived, alerted by Billy. The evidence was placed in the hands of a federal marshal who had been working with Ian, while the captured men were taken to the Spokane jail. "It's not over," Olivia said as they watched the procession depart. "Hollister will send others." Ian's expression was resolute. "Not for long." With this evidence and these men's testimonies, the judge and his brother will hang. True to his prediction, events moved swiftly. Judge Hollister attempted to flee the territory but was apprehended at the Oregon border. His brother, the notorious Texas outlaw, was captured trying to ambush the federal marshal transporting the evidence. Within a month, both men stood trial in Olympia, far from their sphere of influence in Spokane. Throughout this time, Ian remained at Olivia's homestead, ostensibly for her protection. In truth, a tentative friendship had blossomed between them, born of shared danger and mutual respect. They worked side by side, repairing the damage to the house, tending the livestock, preparing for winter. On a crisp November evening, as they sat before the fire after a day of hard work, Ian finally spoke of leaving. "The trial's over. Hollisters will hang next week," he said, staring into the flames. "My business in Washington Territory is concluded." Olivia felt an unexpected pang of loss. "Where will you go?" "Not sure," he admitted. "Texas holds nothing for me now." Silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words. "This land is too much for one person," Olivia said finally, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. "Isaiah and I always dreamed of building something lasting here." Ian's gaze lifted to meet hers, cautious hope kindling in his eyes. "Are you offering me work, Mrs. Jameson?" "I'm offering you a reason to stay," she replied simply. "If you want one." The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of growing affection and lingering hesitation. Ian moved into the spare room, insisting on maintaining propriety despite the increasing warmth between them. They developed an easy rhythm, his strength complementing her determination, her warmth softening his hard edges. When the first heavy snow of December confined them to the house for 3 days, they passed the time sharing stories of their lives before grief had shaped them. Ian spoke of his childhood in Kentucky, his years as a Texas Ranger, the woman he'd loved and lost. Olivia told him about growing up in Missouri, meeting Isaiah during a church social, their journey west to build a new life. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," she confessed one evening as they sat shoulder to shoulder on the porch despite the cold, watching the stars emerge. "After Isaiah died, I thought that part of me died too." Ian's hand found hers, strong fingers intertwining with her own. "I understand," he said simply, and she knew he truly did. Their first kiss came on Christmas Eve, gentle and questioning beneath the mistletoe Billy had hung as a surprise. Their second was more certain, a promise of possibilities neither had dared imagine months before. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came renewal. The homestead flourished under their combined efforts. Ian's steady presence became a fixture in Spokane, respected by the townspeople who had witnessed the downfall of corruption in their midst. On a warm evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Ian took Olivia's hand. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "A dangerous pastime," she teased gently. His lips curved in the smile that had become increasingly frequent in recent months. "Indeed." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I know this land will always be part of the life you built with Isaiah. I would never ask you to forget that." Olivia's heart quickened. "I know. But I've come to love this place," he continued. "And more importantly, the woman who makes it home." From his pocket, he withdrew a simple gold band. "I'm not asking to replace what you lost, Olivia, just hoping to build something new alongside the memories you cherish." Tears blurred her vision as she looked from the ring to his face, finding there all the certainty she needed. "Yes," she whispered, watching joy transform his weathered features. They married in June, a small ceremony in the meadow beside the house. Billy, now their permanent ranch hand at 15, stood proudly as witness. Sheriff Donovan and his wife, the new federal marshal, neighbors who had stood by Olivia in her darkest days, all gathered to celebrate this unexpected happiness. That night, as they stood together in the bedroom that was now truly theirs, Olivia removed Isaiah's hat from the peg where it had hung since his death. She held it against her chest for a long moment, honoring the love that would always be part of her heart. Ian watched with understanding, no jealousy in his gaze. When she finally looked up at him, eyes shining with tears both sad and joyful, he stepped forward. "He'd be glad you're not alone," Ian said softly. Olivia nodded, unable to speak. With gentle reverence, she handed the hat to Ian, who took it carefully from her hands. He moved to the wall where his own hat hung on a peg and placed Isaiah's hat beside it, an acknowledgement of the past that had led them to each other, of the man whose absence had created the space for Ian's presence. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, coming to stand beside him, "for understanding." Ian drew her into his arms, his kiss a promise of all the days to come. "We carry them with us," he murmured against her hair. "All those we've loved and lost. They make us who we are." As moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting silver patterns across the floor, Olivia and Ian began their life together not as replacements for what had been lost, but as something entirely new, forged in grief and danger, tempered by respect and understanding, and finally, transformed by love that neither had expected to find again. In the years that followed, the Northcott homestead became known throughout the territory for its hospitality and prosperity. They added rooms as their family grew, first with the birth of their son, Thomas, then daughter Elizabeth 2 years later. Billy remained with them, eventually becoming a partner in the expanding ranch operations. On summer evenings, Olivia would often find Ian on the porch, watching their children play in the yard where he had once stood as a wary stranger. She would join him, their hands finding each other's without thought, their shoulders touching in comfortable familiarity. "You ever regret it?" she asked once as they celebrated 5 years of marriage. "Staying in one place after all those years of wandering." Ian's gaze swept over their home, their land, their children, before coming to rest on her face with a tenderness that still made her heart skip. "Not for a single moment," he answered, and the truth of it shone in his eyes as bright and enduring as the western sky. And on the wall inside their home, 2 hats remained side by side, one belonging to the man whose love had given Olivia the strength to endure loss, the other to the man whose love had taught her to live again. Different journeys that had converged in an unexpected union, bringing healing to wounded hearts and creating a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone.